Isn't it going away? It's not going away. Oh. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. For the record, it's October 5th, 2023, and the time is 6:30. I'll begin with the roll call. So, Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Roden.
Here.
Kerner. Here. Parker, not present. And Menchow.
Present.
With 5 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for attending the council meeting this evening. As a reminder to everybody, we are live streaming tonight's meeting. If you do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting, I ask that all comments be made from the podium up here to use the microphone. For those that are online watching the video or watching the council meeting tonight, the only way they can hear the comments is if you speak from the microphone. And when you do get the opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself and state whether you're a resident or not of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. And we didn't have anybody sign up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard tonight. Is there anybody that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay. With that, then we'll move on to our consent agenda tonight. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the September 21st, 2023 special city council meeting minutes. And second is approval of the September 21st, 2023 regular city council meeting minutes. Is there any council member that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? And with that, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? From Chesley, and a second?
Second.
And from Keith? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. I would like to make one modification to the consent or to the agenda that we have tonight. We do have a report from the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. I would like to move that report up to this time. Does anybody have a concern with that? Okay, then we'll move on to the report, which is item number 10 on our agenda tonight, which is a semi-annual report from the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. And Paul.
I'm Paul Maben. I'm chairman of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. Our committee met on September 2nd of this year, and so we meet semi-annually. The report is found on page 58 of your packet, if you look at that. We have 3 points on there. There really hasn't been any changes to the impact fees that we look at, but we know that costs of just about everything are going higher, and home building continues to slow down. Current impact fees were approved by the council in 2020, and so our target has been, if we need to change the impact fees, to do it in 2025, and there needs to be some homework before that. You may have seen, I brought along what was in the Bernie Star. If you saw that here a couple of weeks ago, this is for Esperanza. This is their impact fees, and they were going from $18,000 impact fees. Ours is about 15, which they established in 2014 to almost $37,000, and they're asking for approval from TCEQ for that. What we recommend is, as I said, there needs to be some work done before there's any change to the impact fees, and we recommend that the water, wastewater, and reuse master plan be updated prior to that, which would mean next calendar year. And so we can present to the council. This will allow us to have updated, particularly the capital improvement plan and the land use assumptions. Those are the two key pieces of that. In addition to what we normally do in CIAC, Scott came and gave us a presentation on the 5-year capital improvement plans for utilities, roadways, and such that may require debt financing. And he was looking for citizen help for an advisory committee, and we told him we would more than would be welcome to serve, and I believe he's going to cover that tonight. Any questions from the council?
Good. Any questions from anybody here tonight? Thanks, Paul. With that, then we'll move on to our consideration items. We have 3 of those tonight. The first is consideration and possible action approving a heritage tree plan for the Fox Falls Offsite Gravity Sewer Project.
Yes. Good evening, Council. My name is Kelsey. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the city. And so the Fox Falls Offsite Sewer Project is a SAWS project consisting of 2 miles of sewer line upgrades. These upgrades will cross through Fair Oaks Parkway, Ross Bank, Leslie, Pfeiffer Drive, and the woods at Fair Oaks Ranch neighborhood, and requires tree removal to accommodate the larger sewer line. This project is going to be completed within existing SAWS utility easements as well. And so in May, a tree preservation plan and this heritage plan was submitted to the Public Works Department by CUDE engineers on behalf of the applicant, which is Meritage Homes of Texas. As outlined in section 8.8 of the Unified Development Code, tree mitigation shall be met at a 1-to-1 ratio for trunk circumference inches to be removed. If replacement is infeasible, city manager may allow some or all mitigation to take place on a separate public site within the city, or may allow mitigation by payment of fee for some or all of the trees marked to be removed. The applicant voiced concerns regarding the replanting of mitigation trees within the utility easements, since they may interfere with future maintenance requirements or cause damage to the underground sewer line. Additionally, the applicant stated that they have attempted to find an alternate location for replanting, but no resolution with the HOAs had been met. So in August, CUDE requested to move forward with these plans with the intention of mitigation being met through a fee in lieu of replacement trees. This plan is subject to the city's Unified Development Code adopted in 2019, and section 8.8 states that a heritage plan is required to be reviewed and approved by Planning and Zoning and City Council prior to any construction activities that is likely to endanger the heritage trees. So what was submitted within this heritage plan was 4 heritage trees, all marked to be removed. To mitigate, the applicant is requested to pay a fee in lieu, which the payment for removing heritage trees is estimated to be around $82,400. So on September 14th, P&Z recommended the approval of this heritage plan with the condition that mitigation be met by payment of fee in lieu once adopted by City Council. That fee in lieu was part of the updated fee schedule, which was approved and adopted on September 21st by City Council. This would be the first payment that we would receive from this fee in lieu, and so City Council may use these funds to initiate a tree preservation program for such activities, including but not limited to right-of-way tree maintenance, brush removal, oak wilt remediation, citywide planning, and a workshop to discuss potential options is planned for later in this month. If anyone should have any questions regarding the plan itself, the CUDE is here to speak on behalf if you have any questions, and of course I'm here if you have any other questions as well.
Ma'am.
The only question I have is, have we communicated with the Woods residents about the possibility of this happening? And if we haven't, do we have a plan to do so before the trees come out so that we don't get millions of screaming emails?
So the HOA is aware of this project coming on. In order for this project to happen, they had to widen the existing easement, and I believe the HOA is very aware of this coming through.
They were actually working with the HOA specifically on trying to identify sites to plant trees, so the HOA has been involved.
This is actually probably for Scott or Summer. Do we have to do a budget amendment to receive these funds? I'm not sure if we have a line item to accept this, or?
Do not need one to receive the funds. We would need a budget amendment to appropriate the funds if we wanted to spend them in some point in time. So at a subsequent meeting, we're going to, excuse me, we're going to come back to the council with an actual proposed policy for how to invest the tree mitigation preservation funds, or tree or heritage funds, however we phrase that, for applicable uses of these funds. And then if and when we identify project or projects to use, that's when we would come to you with a budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anybody here tonight? Then could I get a motion to approve the Heritage Tree Plan for the Fox Falls Offsite Gravity Sewer Project with the condition that mitigation be met by payment of the fee in lieu of mitigation?
I so move.
From Laura, in a second.
Second.
From Chesley. Any other questions or comments from council? And with the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our second item for consideration tonight, which is consideration and possible action approving a resolution which is designating the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee as the Bond Advisory Committee and directing the city manager to develop financing options in support of the fiscal year 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Scott Husengate, Interim City Manager. As Mr. Bay may have been introduced just a couple of minutes ago, this is a resolution to potentially establish a bond advisory committee and direct the city manager to pursue financing options for a potential bond. As proposed, the members of this ad hoc committee would be the same as that of the kayak members, although from a state code standpoint, it would technically be a separate committee, composed of the same members. If approved, as the cover sheet I think addresses, the committee would review the proposed 5-year plan as identified by council and refined by staff. They would review the scope and the timing of the proposed projects, recommend any potential updates, modifications as part of really a holistic recommendation back to the council. The council is not required to appoint a committee, but it can be, I think, very helpful to provide just a comprehensive process for reviewing each of the projects individually as part of that, and really providing another set of eyes from an external perspective back to council prior to adoption and consideration. As you know, the city has only really done a couple of bonds in its history and has never really undertaken a project scope of this magnitude, so an external review could be helpful. In addition to looking at the projects, the committee may also look at potential financing options. The primary options include general obligation bonds, certificates of obligations or COs, and revenue bonds are the primary three. GO bonds are usually typically used to fund usually general fund projects. In our case, streets and drainage would primarily be applicable there. GO bonds do require voter approval, either at an election in May or November. May is preferable because of the timing of the budget cycle. You cannot appropriate property tax INS levy until a bond issue is approved. So since we approve our budgets in October, May is the preferred timeline if we choose to go to a general obligation bond. COs, certificates of obligations, are substantially similar to GOs, and in almost every respect, COs do not require elections, although they can be petitioned for referendum. And that's really the primary difference. The interest rates, terms, issuances, everything is virtually identical between CEOs and GEOs except for that election requirement. And with CEOs, you can't typically apply new building projects to CEOs. That's really the one primary distinction between GEOs and CEOs. We can get more into that as we go into the process, but the resolution specifically lists February as a target date for reviewing the projects and for the city manager to come back with a financing plan primarily to anticipate a possible general obligation bond election if the council chooses to do that. If we use the CEO, those timelines could be relaxed a little bit. There's not a strict time requirement in order to do that, so that's a consideration for the council as we go through the process. As we go into the process, staff will likely recommend, CEOs just because of those lack of timeline constraints. I think that will be the same recommendation you hear from our financial advisor, Samco, when we bring them in to talk about this. But either option is viable, and we wanted to prepare for either consideration or decision the council wants to make. So I provided the presentation we gave to the Kayak Committee last month in September in your packet. We modified it per Councilman Roden's recommendations to give you the project totals on your sheet before you. I don't plan to go over that unless you want to. It's the exact same presentation you saw in July during our budget deliberations. The only change is we added what the council appropriated for the fire station into that presentation. Otherwise, the numbers are the same as what you saw in July and what Kayak saw tonight. So that's a overview of the entire process, but really tonight, the intent is to, if the council deems it appropriate, to appoint a committee to begin the review of the projects with the intent, again, of providing a final recommendation in February. And as you heard from Chair Mabin, the Kayak members individually did express their willingness to take on this extra challenge if the council desires. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
As part of this process, I believe they'll meet monthly.
At least monthly. I could potentially going bi-monthly depending on the scope. We have several projects to get through, but we did discuss that this will be a little more meeting time than the committee is used to, but I think they were up to the challenge.
And as part of this process, they'll get I know that they've been exposed to some of these already, but they'll get a full presentation on each of the projects and.
Right, yeah, the intent is to go through each project and basically in category order. So we'll go through probably per meeting roadways, drainage, water, wastewater, and we'll see how long that takes because there is some detail involved there, but the intent is to go through them in detail.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just a quick question on these kind of bonds. What's generally the term?
There are a lot of options. It varies considerably, but for our 5-year plan, we assumed a 20-year term.
A year, okay.
And we projected, I believe, 3.5% interest at the time, which is probably conservatively high for GEOs and CEOs, but that's the assumption we made.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions or comments from anybody here tonight? Paul, y'all are up for the challenge? All right.
More meetings.
With that, then, can I get a motion to approve a resolution appointing members to the Ad hoc Bond Advisory Committee and directing the city manager to develop financing options in support of the FY 2024-2028 capital improvement plan?
So moved.
From Keith, and a second
Second.
from Emily. Any other comments from council? Motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is approved. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Paul. The last consideration item that we have on the agenda tonight is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution ordering a special election for the unexpired term of Council Place 3. And Christina, are you going to lead us through this one?
Good evening, everyone. Christina Pachocchio, City Secretary. I'm here to speak with you tonight regarding a special election. You may all recall that on the 21st, Councilmember Bliss announced that she was going to be submitting her resignation, which she did the next day, and it was accepted by the mayor. And what happens in this case is, with our city charter, anything over 365 days, a term that remains, we have to have a special election, and we must have that within 120 days. Since we received her resignation on the 22nd, and it was accepted, that must-have election date is January 20th, 2024. The next step that we did was communicate with our county election officials, Bexar and Kendall County specifically. And we learned that it is a challenge to have an election during the holidays. We are going to be coming up to November, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And not only are those holidays a problem, but we also have January, which pretty much takes out either of those counties to be able to serve us. They have mandatory trainings, and they'll be pretty much a skeleton crew, and they will also be working towards the primaries for March, and including sending out all of the, I'm trying to remember the term, military and overseas voter empowerment Act forms that allows our military to vote remotely. So basically, January is off the table. They did offer December 9th and December 16th, which are Saturdays. When you are looking at an election, a special election, you kind of have to determine the date of the election and the date that the election is called. And depending on how many days fall between, kind of gives you your path. So according to Election Code 201054A1, that's the top one, if you order the election on or before the 70th day before the election date, you have to have that term where applications are received from whatever date you order it until the 62nd day. Conversely, if you order it and it's between 70 and 46, I believe, you have a different time frame. So ordering it on October 5th, the 40th day, is a much longer time frame than we would have for the 16th, and I'll just show you that in the next slide. I discussed this with the mayor, and we were looking at both of the calendars that were provided, or we calculated, and as much as you wouldn't think so, the December 9th has a lot more benefits for us as a city. It allows a longer time for the applicants to submit their applications, and it also, because it butts up to the Thanksgiving holiday, removes some of those mandatory early voting dates, which cuts back our costs. When we looked at the December 9th, we fell at 65 days, so just after the 70th day, and that put us in that second bullet point. Here's a illustration of that December 9th election day. If we order it on the 5th, 40 days before election, between the day you order it and election, that's when people can apply. If you look at the next one, this is December 16th, because when we order it on the 5th, is, I believe, 70th day. They only have 12 days until they hit the 62nd day, which is part of the law. So because of this reason and because of the cost savings, we were going to be moving toward the December 9th, but wanted to make sure council approved that. These are just some of the special dates. This is for the December 9th election. I've identified when we have to put newspaper notices, when the last day to withdraw or have a write-in candidate. That's 5 days after the time that someone would apply. And then I have the early voting dates and times. You can see that Thanksgiving, I believe, is on the 23rd. Normally, we would have early voting that time, but because of the holiday, we don't. And then moving on, we have the 9th as the proposed election day. Now, we do have some choices, and I wanted to bring to council. To let you know, we do have 2 voting locations. We have the main location at the Kendall County Courthouse Annex, and we also have our location here at Fair Oaks Ranch. The options that we have, the current quote that we received includes 5 10-hour days, 8 to 6, at our facility, and then 2 12-hour days. That's the second week, the Monday and the Tuesday. It also includes 6 hours on the Saturday for early voting. It also includes, so that comes out to $18,899.95 to hold that election. We do have options. We can take away some of the time if you think that's worthwhile. We can go down, instead of having 8-hour days, we can have 10-hour days and a couple of 12-hour days. We can go down to 8-hour days during early voting. We can maintain the 6-hour Saturday, and that will bring us down like $504 less at $18,395.95. We can do that 8-hour day throughout and omit the Saturday early voting date. And that will save us like another $1,700, but totally it ends up $16,647.95. So it's just up for council to decide how you want to go. Kendall County is more than happy to support us in our election. It's just a matter of confirming our desires. And I just put a copy of the motion there for you in case you needed to see that. I'm able to take any questions if you have any.
Questions to start with?
I have just a clarification. So we would have both locations, the Kendall and here. It's
Correct.
not either or, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, there will be 2.
And I think it's a requirement.
Yes, sir.
And that's for both early voting and on election day?
Election day, they wouldn't hold. It would just be here.
Just here on election day?
Yes.
But for early voting, they could do 2 locations?
Correct.
Okay. And it also looks like it works out well around our city council meetings, correct?
Actually, that was another point that I discussed with the mayor. Let's go back. So you're saying the 16th would work better?
No, I'm
No,
saying
No.
the 9th would work
The
better.
9th. We would actually, we would pretty much lose that. Well, I guess we could technically have that meeting.
Yeah.
Yes?
Well,
Yes, that would work.
there'd be no early voting, but this room would still be set up for the election. All the equipment and everything would already be set up and in here.
Yeah.
So we'd have to find another location.
Historically, when we've contracted with Bear County, they came in and they removed their equipment and brought it back. That I did not discuss with Kendall County. When we did it the last time, I think they have small enough equipment, and it's not as invasive as it is working with Bear County in terms of them having to contract another company and come back out. I think we could actually coordinate them taking down their equipment and bring it back if that's what we desired. The other option would be is whether council wanted to not have a meeting on the 7th.
If we went with the 16th, that we would have potentially 2 meetings that would be impacted.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And again, it would cost more because we would be having more days for early voting. I don't have a quote for that because we kind of, once we saw what the options were, the mayor and I kind of veered toward the 9th.
When would we canvass the vote?
I beg your pardon?
Would we canvass the vote?
That I don't have calculated. Normally, that would be a week or 2 after,
So at Christmas.
yeah.
Well, we do have a meeting scheduled for the 21st. I believe we do the canvassing. It's within the week after the election, so.
And I would imagine that they would
Special
be able
meeting.
to get the results pretty quick turned around unless there's any overseas ballots that are pending.
know that December 9th is
I
the
think
best
the-
option.
Right.
I think
Yep.
the 9th is the best option.
Agreed.
And I think we should do the first option of, it's not that much of a difference. And I think having more time for people to be able to vote, especially during that time period, is probably better for the residents.
If it doesn't go after the workday, then it's almost not as important, you know.
Right.
Option 1 then.
Okay. And then as far as the meeting on the 7th, Christina, we'll hold that off to the next council meeting to make a determination on that. If we could just find out, even if we could store the equipment here, if that's a possibility, if they could just take it down and store it and then allow us to do the council meeting.
Yeah, I do recall that we worked that out the last time, but I do believe they took it with them and just brought it back,
Okay.
just for their own security and, you know. But I can discuss that with them again, for sure, definitely.
Okay.
Will it affect the court?
I'm sorry?
The court? Guess we would have to take it down for court anyways, right?
Well, if it's on.
I did not see any, when I looked on the calendar, there was no court.
December date will actually be different due to
Oh, right, 'cause-
making arrangements with the,
Oh, yeah, he had already said it needed to be rescheduled in December.
right, so
That's good.
that will not conflict with the court date in
Right.
December.
Okay. Been better.
Cool.
Any other questions? Any questions from anybody here tonight? Then can I get a motion to approve a resolution ordering a special election to be held on December 9th, 2023 for the election of council member place 3?
So moved.
Go ahead.
Second.
How about the motion that Chesley and Keith second,
Okay.
and Emily to confirm?
And just in case.
Can I say something?
And Laura to confirm.
Any other comments from council? With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
That completes the consideration items that we had on the agenda for tonight. We do have one workshop item on the agenda tonight, which is a review of the multimodal transportation and Dietz Elkhorn survey results. I'll turn it over to Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Grant Watanabe, the Public Works Director for the city. And to help present the results from our 2 surveys, I do have a few folks in the room I'd like to introduce. They're Mike Garza and Jeannie Tarrance from Legacy Engineering, and also Joel Mesa from Tate Dawson. So if you remember, a couple weeks ago, we kicked off 2 surveys at our town hall meeting. That was August 29th, and we left that survey open for about 2 weeks. So for each survey, we're going to cover these exact same things: a review of the survey results, a summary of the comments, and I believe you have a handout that has copies of the actual comments received. Yes, some takeaways from each survey, and then next steps associated with each survey. Again, these surveys were open for 2 weeks, and we did have a tremendous response. And I just wanted to thank all the participants. In total, for both surveys, we had 1,251 responses, and that broke down to about 704 for the multimodal transportation survey and 547 for the Dietz Elkhorn project survey. And we did receive a few hard copy paper surveys that were turned in, and those were just know that those results have been included in the results presentation here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Garza to dive into the details.
Gotcha. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Excited to be here today to talk about the results of the survey. As Grant mentioned, we got tremendous results. I'm really proud of the way our community stepped up here and participated. We had a total, as Grant mentioned, of 1,251 total surveys completed. And I was adding up the comments. There's about 13 pages on each survey that we put together for you guys in your packets, and they added up to about 701 total comments. So plenty of reading to do, plenty of time that we need to spend representing our community to make sure that we're taking those into consideration as we move forward and work on the various projects that we've discussed earlier today. I was looking back, and I think one thing I wanted to say also is I think next month we hit an anniversary of 4 years that we've been representing the city as your GEC. I think one of the things that I've learned from the last 4 years is that, we're a unique community by far, and we have a group of folks that want to remain unique. We want to, keep our rural aesthetic. We want to make sure that we don't change the character of our community. And we saw that in a lot of the survey results. So I want you to that's an overarching theme in everything that we're about to go through. But at the same time, we know, and y'all know, that things are changing right around us. We know with HEB coming in down the street, Lemon Creek development, all the other development in this one of the fastest growing counties in the state, we know that there are a lot of things that we need to be ready for. And the goal of this survey is to take a holistic look at how our community feels about where we're at right now and where we want to be. So there were a few comments that almost alluded to these surveys being almost like we were trying to push certain results on the community, and that's not the case at all. The survey is purely to collect data so that as we move forward, we can use that data to make the best decisions on how we plan for our community. So the first question we asked, we just wanted to get a good snapshot of who was participating in the survey. And I'm proud to say that 98% of the folks that are participating were City of Fair Oaks Ranch residents. And out of them, we saw that 47% of the participants were residents that have been here for 10 plus years. So we got a really good group of folks participating here. One of the first questions we asked was, what kind of modes of transportation do you use? We want to just have a good understanding of how people get from point A to point B within our city. As you would expect, we saw a large percentage of folks using the passenger car and truck methodology. There was also, as we know, we are a golf cart community. We saw a lot of individuals or respondents mention golf carts, and we thought the walking was going to be a result we would see, but not necessarily at 28%. That was a pretty large result, and I think we have a lot of individuals that use walking in our community, both on an exercise level and just leisurely path as well.
Question? Can I?
Yes.
Were people allowed to select multiple answers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if they answered passenger car, it was added up with all the other times that other ones were answered. So what I'm saying is, I would imagine 100% of the people selected passenger car or truck, but I can't see that on here. It looks like only 40% selected that.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, I think that would bring more value to me to say which percentage of the respondents selected passenger car? Which percentage selected walking? Not just out of all of the responses, which percentage of it? Because it would give me much more data to say 100% of the people said passenger car, because I don't know of anyone that walks to work or takes the golf cart to work, or, I mean, they may drive to work and then walk leisurely as part of exercise and potentially take their golf cart to the golf course too. But I think it would bring me more value to have seen it broken out that way, if it's possible.
We can provide that, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you. The next topic of the survey, we had to kind of fill in the blank, if you will, where we were asking residents to let us know what they would like to see more of. So I would like to see more blank within the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. And some of the options that you'll see on here, we developed both at the staff level and as your GEC, just knowing, having worked with the city for, like I said, the last 4 years, knowing that we have residents that use the golf carts going through the community. We know that we have folks that even use, sorry, I should have said this earlier. This particular survey is focused on the multimodal aspect of the entire city. The next part that I'm going to go over after this is more on Dietz Elkhorn. I should have made that clarification earlier. I apologize. So as we're looking at the entire city, we had different types of items that they could fill in for this particular question. And as you can see here, we had different options like, would you like to see more roadway lighting, more pedestrian lighting? Would you want to see no change at all? Are you looking at combined use paths or shared use paths as something that you want to focus on for our future? Do we want to get more trails, more bike paths, et cetera? And you can see the results here, and the results speak for themselves. I think the thing that's important here is, as a community, when it comes to multimodal nature for the entire community, one of the things that we need to start looking at is the possibility of incorporating various pedestrian elements. I think that was one of the themes here, and it's something that we'll talk about when I summarize the takeaways. Yes, ma'am.
Something that I had brought up before we went down this path of doing this was, how are we going to correlate all the pie in the sky wants to actually, hey, if you choose multimodal, your taxes are going to go up. And I took the survey personally, actually, and didn't see that at all correlated. So a lot of people can say, oh yeah, hey, I definitely want combined use paths and shared use paths, but they don't have any clue that that's going to raise their taxes an exorbitant amount of money.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Councilmember.
I had a question. It's actually one that will help me for the rest of the presentation. Is what are you considering combined use path versus shared use path? Because I think maybe the residents probably thought they were about the same thing. So to me, I would combine those two, unless there is a very specific difference and you're sure every resident understood the difference between the two.
So at our actual town hall meeting, we spent a lot of time discussing that. And then also in the survey itself, there were definitions of each one. So I'm hoping that people understood that. We figured that may come up, so I'll explain it right now. The difference is when you're talking about a shared use path per AASHTO guidelines, which we as engineers need to abide by, there are no motorized vehicles of any form on it.
No golf carts.
So basically golf carts, yes, ma'am. You can have bikes, scooters, pedestrians, et cetera. But the minute golf carts are introduced, the safety level kind of changes a little bit. Any sort of motorized vehicle changes that. You can incorporate golf carts on a shared use path, but it's no longer called a shared use path. It's a combined use path. Yes, ma'am.
Got it. So combined use path equals golf carts, shared use equals not.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, helpful.
So, and just to, I guess, one of the comments was on where we go from here. I think we'll cover that in a minute. I want to make clear that the goal of the survey is to get information so that we can start planning for potential modifications in our footprint. A good example is on the Dietz Elkhorn Road project. We sat down with Pape Dawson Engineers, who we hired to design that project. And when we started discussing potential alternative typical sections and should we look at right-of-way, what are we doing with utilities, what do we want to incorporate in our project, we kind of said, wait, let's stop, let's take a break here. Let's go to the citizens, let's see what it's important to them. Let's present this to council and let you guys let us know what's important to you. And then we'll start developing alternatives. So we haven't made any decisions at all based on this data, and I hope citizens know that this is just the first step in the process. It's the data collection process so we can try to give them options to consider in the future. So speaking of golf carts, we know we're a golf cart community. We know our specific laws and our current policy allow golf carts to be in the travel lane with other vehicles. And we wanted to understand from as many folks and as many residents as we could how they felt about the current policy. And I was very interested in these results, and it was interesting to see that only 31% of the individuals that did participate in the survey felt that golf carts should stay essentially in the place that they are today. I thought that was interesting. 15% of the respondents said that golf carts should essentially be on the golf course only, not within the roadway or within the traveling area. 24% said, 30% agreed that they should be on a combined use path, and 24% agreed that they can be on the roadway, but on a separate path than passenger vehicles. In other words, on an outside shoulder or in their own lane. This same question was asked not only on the multimodal side, but also on the Dietz Elkhorn side. And on that result, which I'll go over in a minute, the number for people that wanted to remain in its current policy went from 31 to 22%. So it was an interesting statistic and something that we just need to look at as we continue to plan for these future projects. We also presented some slides that discuss potential traffic calming devices. In the past, when we conducted a Dietz Elkhorn Road specific safety study, we had a lot of stakeholders and individuals come to us and say that we need to do something to reduce traffic, to calm traffic, to slow speeders down, and to get trucks off of our roadways. So we presented some options here, anything from chicanes to chokers, speed humps, speed tables, traffic circles, just different items that could potentially be applied that have been used in other parts of the country. And the number one response was none of these, just FYI. Yes, go ahead.
Mike, you and I've been here since the 4 years you've been here, and I actually continue to be impressed in how you find a way of getting roundabouts in every presentation you send to me. So, congratulations on that one. Clearly not my choice, but I get that most people pick none.
Well, number one was none of these, FYI.
But I
And
know
then it was
you were clear to point that out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Another item we brought to our survey was we wanted to make sure that citizens still back the comprehensive plan and our current roadway classification that was put together roughly, I guess, 6 years ago or so. We wanted to make sure that it's still relevant today and that we're all in agreement with what is currently in our plan. And we know we have local rural residential standards, neighborhood residential standards, local connectors, and then our major collectors. And you'll see that for the most part, the overwhelming majority agreed that all of these should remain the same on all of those individual classifications, except for the collector. That was one where you see that yellow portion standing out a little bit, where they may want us to revisit the collector-specific typical section that you see there on your screen, which is a good segue as we get into the Dietz Elkhorn discussion. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, we got a ton of comments, 700 total comments, each one anywhere from a few words to a whole paragraph, so a lot of reading to do. We tried our best to categorize those comments into specific themes, if you will, and that's what you see here on this slide. Approximately 83 comments were related to speed, 79 to pedestrian and bicycle amenities, 74 to discourage traffic from coming through our community, and so forth all the way through there. There were some comments that we could not categorize, so those are just other. But I highly encourage you to read through those and continue as a group. We need to continue as a group to research that and make sure we're incorporating those comments into our planning for the community. Our main takeaways from the survey results were, at least on the multimodal survey itself, were that the majority of survey respondents were residents with 10 plus years, which is great. We got a good group of folks to speak with here on the survey. After passenger vehicles, walking and golf carts were the two mostly used modes of transportation, which we pretty much expected to see. The results suggest that the community would like to separate cars from other modes of transportation, which if anyone's walking down the street, you usually don't want to be in the middle of a travel lane, so we kind of expected to see something like that as well. The results suggest that the community may need to look at reconsidering golf cart paths and where they are and how they travel. I know unfortunately, there was a fatality not too long ago with someone that was on a golf cart. I know that there's a lot of the comments as you read through there were a lot of comments about golf carts not belonging in the travel lane. We just need to make sure that we're reading through that and thinking of that as we continue to plan. I'm not saying that's what we have to change, but I'm just saying some folks are concerned, and that's something we need to think about. Most respondents selected traffic calming devices, to not implement any traffic calming devices, and the second most were those roundabouts. Just joking, sorry. Most respondents agreed that the city's roadway classification system is agreed with it, and they felt like it's a good reflection of our current policy, which is good news. I'm really happy to say that we had, 12? We had 12 individuals sign up saying that they would love to get more involved and help out with some form of multimodal planning as we move forward as a city. So when we get to our next steps here, I think it's very important that we as your GEC, city staff, and you as mayor and council, we take a look at the results of these surveys, we take a look at the feedback, the comments, and we dive into them and we try to make well-educated decisions to give us not only a plan, but also individual projects that the community can stand behind and support. So next steps are going to be that additional research, reviewing those results, getting feedback from you as council on what we want to do with these results, and possibly even establishing a multimodal transportation committee if that's something council chooses to do moving forward. As I mentioned earlier, we had two different surveys, the multimodal and the one specifically focused on Dietz Elkhorn Road. We know we have a roughly $5 million reconstruction project that will rehabilitate the existing pavement that we know is in really bad shape from Ralph Fair Road to Fair Oaks Parkway. As a part of that reconstruction process, what do we want to do? Do we just go out there and purely reconstruct the road and leave everything alone, or should we be adding various amenities to the project? That was the purpose of this survey, to get that public input and feedback. We had another fill in the blank question here. I would like the Dietz Elkhorn roadway reconstruction project to incorporate blank, and we gave the same options that we discussed before. One of the themes I took away from this was there were a lot of specific comments talking about lighting, and a lot of people do not want any lighting whatsoever. So that was the main takeaway from some of the comments I read through here. Just FYI, if you haven't had a chance to go through them yourself, but you will see, as one of the council members mentioned, the area highlighted there, the shared use / combined use, whether that's an overlap or not, those were the two items that stood out. And what that tells us as we're going through the results are that people want, whether it's peds or bikes or golf carts, they kind of want to separate that from the safety aspect, from the traveling public. I mentioned earlier we'd go over the same question on the Dietz specific survey when it came to golf carts, where should they be? Very similar results came up. As I mentioned, it went from about 31% to 22% of individuals supporting the current policy. So that's an interesting takeaway to consider. This one really surprised me. Is over the last 4 years, all I've ever heard is slow people down on Dietz Elkhorn. That's the consistent theme that I've heard. Surprisingly, when we asked respondents to let us know, should there be a change, and if there should be a change, should it go up or down, I was really surprised to see that there was a 35% response in increasing the speed limit. I know a portion of Dietz Elkhorn was, I believe, 40 on the west end that went down to 35. The portion that we're talking about here today on this project is 30 today, and there were some individuals that felt we needed to raise that, which I thought was really interesting. When we asked residents to let us know what kind of configuration they'd want to see for this particular section of roadway, we went from kind of a simplistic level to a more complex design, in the sense that we would just come in with the exact same footprint that's out there today, replace the roadway with everything that's out there today, and come right back with it. Should we do the same thing but add wider shoulders? Should we add turn lanes, for example, in certain areas at intersections? Or should we add some sort of physical median barrier down the middle? Or nothing at all, right, if you have no preference. And you'll see that the majority of our respondents agreed with the first two options, which is either leave it alone in its current configuration, one lane in each direction, or possibly the largest result was add wider shoulders, which could be utilized for various modes of transportation. In a similar regard, we tried to categorize, if you will, each of the responses that we received on the Dietz Elkhorn survey. And you'll see that the main topics of response conversations, if you will, were the number one by far was don't allow this to be a cut through for everybody else that is not part of our community. Some other responses were pedestrians and bikes need to be incorporated. Golf carts need to be essentially pulled away from the travel lane, and a lot of speeding related comments as well. Again, I was surprised to see some of those saying raise the speed limit. That was interesting. The takeaways we got from the survey on Dietz were that combined and shared use paths were the highest ranked selected features and something we need to consider as we move forward with that particular project. The results suggest, as I mentioned earlier in the previous summary, that we may need to reconsider as a community what we want to do with golf carts and if they should be in the travel lane per the current policy. The respondents also felt that the speed limit should remain the same. The majority of respondents, but the ones that did say to change it, ironically wanted to raise it. And when it came to the results of the typical section or design criteria we were looking for, about 64% of individuals that responded felt that we should maintain one lane in each direction with the potential of adding wider shoulders. Oh, sorry. Can you go back? I don't know what happened. The next steps on this one are similar to the multimodal survey. We ask that you as council and mayor that you sit down, take a look at the results, read through the comments, and get back with us and staff to decide how we incorporate these into future planning initiatives. We have a consultant on board already to work on that Dietz Elkhorn Road project. Our game plan is to go back to the public with alternatives now. In other words, we collect the data, now we develop various alternatives with cost implications, and then now we can present that to the public saying, we heard you, we took your comments, we took your feedback, here are some alternatives, where do we go from here? So we want to make sure that the public's continuously involved in this process, iteration by iteration. So we ask that you please look through the results, get with us if you have any questions. We want to go back to the public to make sure we develop those alternatives, and then we're asking for additional council feedback on where we go from here with this, the overall cost estimate for the project and what our parameters are for those planning mechanisms with Pave Dawson. I believe that's it, so I can answer any other questions you may have.
Questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Could respondents take the survey multiple times? Did we prevent them from doing that?
It was once per device. So technically, if you had 5 phones, you could take it 5 times. Yes,
I
ma'am.
actually took it multiple times just to put roundabouts to make her mad. But
So we can just, disregard all those comments.
Take them off. Yes, yes, sir.
On the Dietz repair, do we actually have room to add any span to it, like the shoulder or any other from our right-of-ways? Because I know it's tight in there, so.
So I'm sure Grant can answer that, but I know as of right now, our preliminary discussions are that we want to remain within the existing right-of-way footprint, which is in areas
Right.
pretty tight. So in order to do that, we really have to, it becomes a balancing act of what's important. And that's why we wanted to prioritize, is it another travel lane? Is it a separate path? Is it wider shoulders? And we're hoping that these results can help us develop some of those alternatives for consideration. But to answer your question, I think from the get-go, it's going to be either or, not all of the above.
I figured it wouldn't be all the above,
Yes,
but we
sir.
do have some room, is what you're saying, to do something.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Okay.
I believe we have, was it 55 feet, 60 feet of right-of-way? 60 feet of right-of-way? Yeah,
you know what it currently is?
60 feet of right-of-way, yeah.
What's the road currently? How wide is it?
Oh, the road itself?
With the current one shoulder?
We have a 5-foot shoulder on the inside, so probably 28 feet, maybe? Probably 28. I don't have the exact number, sorry. But we have one travel lane in each direction, which are typically anywhere from 10 to 12 feet. And then I believe we have a 5-foot outside shoulder in the westbound direction.
Okay.
So it'll be much wider then?
Yeah.
I mean,
So if we decide to, like, one of our potential alternatives could be to, if we didn't need the outside shoulder, we can kind of segregate that, pull that away from the travel lane. There could be we could shift the center line, a little bit further to the south side, and then have a pedestrian amenity essentially on the north side. So, but all those need to be further vetted
those
and
are
presented.
options, yeah.
Yes.
I think that, I actually am not surprised you got the increase in speed on that stretch. I'll just be frank, because it's because it is a travel, it is a collector street. It is, a connector street. It is a street that people use to move from one part of the city to another. And because of the topography, it is hard sometimes to even go that slow on some of those downhills. I'm literally braking half of the time I'm driving on Dietz Elkhorn just to try to stay within the speed limit. So I'm not surprised that they said that. However, I'm also want to keep in mind that a lot of the answers that we got for that area of Dietz Elkhorn is maybe specific to the fact of the topography of that road, because it is very dangerous. There's a lot of twists and turns and things that you can't see. So having golf carts or people on the road with the cars is not just because it's close quarters, but because you're doing turns and twists a lot. You can't see what's around the corner, and you turn the corner and you're like, whoa, where'd that golf cart come from? Because you can't see as you're coming around. So I think a lot of that you'll see that answer is driven by that particular area of Dietz. But at the same time, I know we are eventually going to be doing the other side of Dietz. We're not talking about that today. But when we are considering what we're doing on this side, we have to consider whether it also makes sense on the other side. Because we don't want to do one thing on one side, and then you hit the parkway, and then all of a sudden now it's different. Now we have two different lanes, or instead of one big lane. We want it to be consistent. So I'm kind of glad we're doing this section first, because it is probably the most, I guess, I don't want to say dangerous, but it has the most twists and turns and changes. But that's kind of my thoughts. I wasn't really surprised with any of the results in here.
Anybody else? Any comments or questions from anybody here tonight? Yes, sir.
Can you go?
Sir,
Sorry.
Please introduce yourself.
I noticed that the golf carts had a considerable percentage, and I was just wondering if there was any analysis done as to how many golf carts are registered in the city. I don't know if those records are available, and compare that to the responses for keeping golf carts either in the lane or adding additional lanes for it. And then the other question I had is on to echo those comments, is that on Dietz Elkhorn, I mean, you just got to ride your brake down the hill to maintain the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. We moved here in 2012. It was 35. It changed to 30. Don't really understand the rationale for that, because the road itself, I don't think, changed. But anyhow, so there was a change there. And the question I would have regarding that is, has any analysis been done of the number of citations issued on Dietz Elkhorn with the 35 and the 30, and look at that data as well? Because I would support a 35. I mean, it's a main road. It's a lot of travel. Yes, it's tight. People will exercise caution if they are so minded. People that aren't will not exercise caution. They'll just do what they think is reasonable. And then the widening of the roadway, I think, is also a consideration. If it were a wider road, then it would support a higher speed limit. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the comment. And one of the things we thought about when we saw the raising of the speed limit is kind of piggybacks off of what you just mentioned. So what we were thinking as we were going through the raw data and preparing this presentation is, if someone were thinking that as they provided their response, they were saying pull golf carts, pull people, pull bikes off of the travel lane, then at that point you have a safe travel lane. So raising the speed limit is not going to be a concern. I think if you're intermingling everybody in one travel lane, it's a totally different story. So I think at least that's my personal opinion, and I believe if we do go back to the public and we do have public support of having a totally separated combined use path where everybody from golf carts to pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters, moms with their strollers, wherever it may be, anybody out there, once they're outside of the travel lane, I believe 35 will be supported by the community. So that's something we've been looking at. But again, we just want that feedback. And in terms of your question on the golf carts, I imagine we have the data available. We might be able to get. PD would have that. Okay, so we can probably provide that, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Was there a question that said, do you have a golf cart?
No, sir. No, sir. Yeah, and the purpose for that was we know that at times there may have been certain individuals that were heavily involved in the policy for golf carts, but we wanted to have a holistic view of the entire community versus just those individuals. So that was the ultimate goal, was just to get a good snapshot of how everyone in the community feels about it. Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess at this point, Pape Dawson is going to develop up to 3 different alternatives for the typical cross section, as well as up to 2 different alignments for the road. And I just want to make sure I got the guidance correctly. We're going to direct Pape Dawson to develop those, maintaining 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, with potentially wider shoulders, and incorporating a combined use path for use by golf carts, pedestrians, or bicyclists that is separate from the traffic lane.
I'm not sure if I would like to see that, but I'm not sure. I mean, if you're looking from the perspective of the car, it makes sense. But I'm not sure as a pedestrian or a cyclist, I'd feel comfortable riding in a lane with a golf cart. But I'd like to see what it looks like. Can we also see what a shared path would look like
Yes,
too?
we can include that as a potential alternative. I guess
Because
keeping
those
the golf
carts are going 30 miles per hour too, right? It just,
Yeah, so we can look at a combined use path alternative and a shared use path alternative. And the only difference is where the golf carts go.
I think if you just present those, let's look at all of them. Let's look at our options, and then we can assess it.
Oh,
I mean, it's 3, you're talking about 3 different options.
Our scope, our contract includes 3 alternatives, right?
So one would be wider shoulders, and then a combined use, and then, what was the third one?
shared use.
Shared use,
And
okay.
I'd like to know just the differences in cost between the alternatives and if we did it currently as is nothing, as it is currently. To give people the option of saying, okay, it would cost us $1 million to redo this road how it is, but it could cost us 2.5 to do this, 4 to do this, or whatever that is. But I think that needs to come along with it. That needs to be made known, because if you're giving us these, I would love to have all of these other things, but if it's going to cost all this money, I'm not going to vote in favor for it. So I think we need to know, at least have some idea of the cost that goes with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
compared to
that's
just a
fair.
repair.
Compared
I
to
think we
just
can work with Kate
reconstructing the
Dawson
road and
Exactly.
making it
to
safe.
develop rough cost estimates based on those different alternatives for
Yeah.
the mile-long stretch or however long Dietz is.
Because it could look great until you see the price tag, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Grant. Completes all the items that we had on the agenda for tonight. We'll move into the requested announcements. Does any council member have an announcement that they'd like to make tonight? Yes, ma'am.
The car show put on by Forha is going to be this Sunday, right? Sunday at Boots Gobbets Park in Deer Meadows. And I think it starts at 4. They're going to have live music, neat cars. Check it out.
Yep. Anybody else? The only other announcement that I had is the annular eclipse is going to happen on the 14th of October. In this one, the moon will cover the sun, but not completely cover it. And what'll happen is there'll a period of time in there. It looks like about 4 minutes. We'll have 90% blockage of the sun, and that looks like it's going to happen around 11:52 to 11:56 on Saturday morning. As part of this, we do anticipate increased traffic around the area, just with the number of people that could be traveling to the area here. Not sure that we would see a huge increase within the city, but I would anticipate increased traffic along Ralph Fair Road and probably I-10 as people are traveling throughout the area. Scott, any other announcements?
Nothing tonight from me. Thank you.
Okay. And for council, are there any items that any council member would like added to a future agenda? Nope. And as part of this, part of the meeting, Christina, anything else that we need or we missed? Nope, good, Scott? All right. We will convene into executive session tonight pursuant to section 551.101 of the Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code. A quorum of the governing body hereby convenes into closed session. We'll do this first reference, section 551.071, consultation with attorney, to receive advice on matters in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct, clearly conflict, and related to an internal affairs investigation being conducted by an independent third-party investigator into complaints within the Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department and the police chief and other related issues. We'll also go into executive session, reference section 551.074, reference personnel matters. The City Council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code section 551.074, personnel matters to deliberate the process and options for filling the vacancy of the city manager, and also to perform the annual evaluation of the city manager. Christina, I have the time now is 7:41, and we are moving into executive session. We'll take a quick break, but at 7:46, I need all of council, the city manager, and the attorney for executive session.
You ready?
I'm ready. Can you
We're
hear me?
back, Mayor.
Christine, I have the time now is 9:41, and we are back in open session. During the time we were in executive session, there were no decisions made that required consideration or action in open session.
Okay.
At this time, is there anything else that we need for tonight?
Yes, sir.
Scott, anything else we missed or we need to cover?
Nothing from me.
All right. I have the time now is 9:42, and we are adjourned. Perfect timing.